Yeah, so I'm Robin. Thanks for having me here, and thanks for being such a big, exciting, and engaged crowd. That's really exciting to see. I come from the eastern part of the state, outside Philadelphia and Bucks County, so it's great to see people in this part of the state being active, and I can't tell you how impressed I am by this gathering. So keep up the good work throughout the year. When I talked to Kathy, she told me that you'd be working on issues, and specifically healthcare, before getting, really settled into doing election work in the second half of the year. That was my understanding, although I'm sure you're doing election work all the way through, starting, 5 months ago. But I'm grateful that you're going to take some time to think and talk about issues, because it's issues that win elections. So that's enough for me, from me about elections. Pennsylvania Health Access Network doesn't endorse candidates. We don't do elections. We're a 501c3. So that's really important to remember as I go forward. So I'm going to talk about state-level healthcare issues. On the federal level, what's happening is important, of course, but it's also gridlocked. Nothing is getting through the Senate. So you may or may not know, for instance, that the House of Representatives, very early in its session, passed a set of reforms to the Affordable Care Act. Reforms that would make the subsidies easier to get, would make the subsidies more generous, would do a lot about reinsurance. It would fix a lot of what's wrong with the Affordable Care Act. They passed that. It wasn't easy for them all to take that vote, but they did it, and it just died. And I've had more than one congressperson say to me, why don't people know that we did this? You say, well, you've got to work harder on getting people to know. They also recently passed H.R. 3, which I'll talk about at the end, which is a transformative bill that allows Medicare to negotiate for low prices. This is a huge, huge deal. In a country where it's hard for us to get any kind of progressive movement in any direction, really, this was a really good, big step, fixing a problem in Medicare Part D that needed to be fixed since that thing was passed. Again, some Congress people are saying, how come people don't know about it? And, they have to work harder, we have to work harder. I'll get to that again. So I'm going to go through this as quickly as I possibly can, because I don't want the room to get overheated, and I have a feeling it's going to. So let me just go through a few of the things that Pennsylvania Health Access Network is working on in 2019, 2020. But before we click forward, I want you to hear just the three main things that we're working on right now. We're working on ending surprise medical billing in Pennsylvania. We're working on lowering prescription drug costs. Ending surprise medical bills is something that can happen overnight. That's a law that can just be passed, put into action, done. Driving down the cost of prescription medication is going to take a lot of steps that get to where we want to go. So those are the main things. I'm going to talk about other things briefly, but those are the main things, and I'll highlight those as we get to them. So next slide. Thank you. That was our plan. That's our agenda for 2019-2020. Prescription drugs, consumer protections, and affordable coverage. Keep going. I'll just say next. There's ending surprise medical bills. The reason we want to end surprise medical bills is that they are, when I first started learning about this, I thought, oh, surprise medical bills. It's just when you go to a doctor who's out of network, no harm, no foul, you just didn't know. It turns out that a big driver behind this is hedge funds, private equity firms, that have found out that there's a loophole in the whole private insurance system, and it is, if you're not in network, if a patient comes to you and you do a procedure for that person, and that person is not in your network, you can bill them for the balance that you have not been paid. And while that is supposed to be something that happens occasionally, the private equity people sat down and said, if we took over, if we offered to run, let's put it in their language, the emergency department of a hospital, took that off their hands, we'll run it for them, and stayed out of network, people are going to come to that hospital, they think it's in network, where else are they going to go? Our out-of-network doctors are going to treat them. They don't have to worry about getting paid what an insurance company would negotiate with them to be paid. We're just going to bill those people. It's insidious. It's evil. I can't I can't be strong enough on this point that they are exploiting a loophole in our system for outrageous personal gain. We're not really blaming the doctors so much. The doctors are hired to be in the department, blah, blah, blah. It's the private equity firms that figured this out, where we have the real problem. Also, there are problems out in rural parts of Pennsylvania where network inadequacy is an issue. In other words, there aren't as many or enough insurance companies offering coverage, and so those doctors are kind of iced out. What are they going to do? Maybe it's only United Healthcare that's out there. They can't join Aetna, they can't join Blue Cross, but whatever. That's a whole separate issue, and that's an issue for the Department of Insurance to take up. That's not what we're talking about when I talk about private equity firms purposely staying out of network. So Pennsylvania has, sitting in the House right now, a terrific bill that was introduced by Tina Pickett, who was a Republican, a respected Republican. We've been in more than one Republican office talking about this bill when the member has said to us, if Tina's name is on it, then I'm for it. She's golden. She's in the insurance committee, she's the chair. Her bill is 1862, and we'll get to that, there it is. Thank you so much for anticipating that. It would do everything. This would give us the strongest protection against surprise medical bills of anywhere in the whole country. And that's important. We would lead the country in protections. So it wouldn't only protect you when you went to a hospital and the cardiologist who saw you wasn't in your network and balance billed you for $400, $300, $80, $2,000. We had the story of a woman who was having surgery for breast cancer. While she was unconscious, the decision to send a sample of her tissue to a path lab was made. The lab wasn't in her network, she got an $8,000 bill. This is in addition to having to deal with breast cancer at 32 years old. It's unconscionable. That was a mistake, and it was settled. That wasn't one of these private equity deals. But that goes to show you how easy it is to have something like that happen to you. You break your leg. Oh, a guy that works for us, he's another organizer for us. He went to his hospital, he checked ahead, it was Abington, checked ahead, everything should have been fine, he was having chest pains, his wife was like, go to the hospital. He said, no, I have to find out if the hospital's a network. He called his insurance company, yes. Finally went to the hospital, had the thing done, found out that one of the cardiologists that saw him was not in network, and he got a $300, $400 bill for that. It's easy to happen. This would protect you against that. It's Bill 1862, and we are asking for people to call their state reps as soon as Monday starts and ask them to pass this bill without amendment.
I can hear the counter argument. If you get an out-of-network service, the insurance holder has to pay some kind of payback, but they already do. That's my point, right?
Mm-hmm. And so I think go forward. Next, thank you. So that tells you what a surprise medical bill is. We just did that. Next. So what's holding it up? And this is method of payment. So what this bill says will happen is, for instance, if you're the doctor who's out of network and I'm the patient, you provide a service to me, and you're, like I just said, you're out of network, you want to get paid $2,000 for what you did. The negotiated price, the fair and reasonable negotiated price, the median negotiated price is $700. That's what you would get. In your part of Pennsylvania, the median negotiated rate that insurance companies are paying for the service you provided was $700. That's what you would get. Doctors are saying median isn't fair because by definition, there's a whole half of the group above that number. Well, that whole half of the group is part of a network and they negotiated for that price. If you want that number, get in a network and negotiate for it. Personally, I think giving people who stay out of network the median price is really too fair, but it's the median price. What the doctors want is arbitration. Everyone knows what arbitration is. Arbitration is going to drive up costs. We have study after study that shows that arbitration drives up costs because you have to bring in people to do the negotiating. Decisions are made. It's called baseball-style arbitration. New York has it. And it drives up costs of premiums and benchmarking, which is what we want to do, which is the set price, the median price right there, that's the benchmark, actually lowers premiums. And that's what this Bill 1862 does. Next. This is the other thing that's holding it up. Ambulance companies, first responders. We all respect and value our first responders. Ambulances are incredibly important. But the fact remains that if I get in an accident on the way home and an ambulance takes me to a hospital, I'm not going to be part of that ambulance's service area. I haven't become a member of that ambulance company. I'm going to be in trouble. And they have the right to balance bill me. We want to make sure, and what the ambulance companies are asking for is to maintain the right to balance bill customers. This is one of the leading causes of surprise medical bills, ambulance rides. We have people reporting that after receiving a bill, $2,000, $1,800, $700, whatever, that they have not used an ambulance since, even while having heart attack symptoms or asthma attacks. So they're self-selecting out of healthcare because they don't want to get another surprise bill, and that's unacceptable. The thing about the ambulance companies to remember is this. It's that paragraph right there, it's key. We're not leaving them high and dry. We understand that they're having financial problems, and that's not good. We don't want that to happen. But the General Assembly ordered a report last year on how to keep EMS services financially solvent. They found over 80 recommendations. Not one of them was to balance bill consumers. So when this comes up, the trick will be to point them to Senate Bill 6, which is that report, and say you have over 80 solutions to your problem. You're not going to solve your problem on the back of sick people, which is what's happening, and that's what surprise medical billing does. Next. We also have been working on limiting short-term, limited duration plans, which I'm not going to spend any time on right now. Let's go, I'll just show you this picture. There's coming up. So they're junk plans. Everyone knows what a junk plan is? This gentleman had a junk plan because people are being priced out of the Affordable Care Act plans, which was a problem that the House of Representatives tried to fix, but that bill died before it could get, when it got to the Senate. We want to actually legislate junk plans out of existence. These are plans that have loopholes in coverage, they're very densely written, it's hard to understand, and what happened to this gentleman is he went to the hospital for something, found out he had 2 pre-existing conditions, and now he has a $35,000 hospital bill. So we want to make sure people aren't victimized by these kinds of plans. Yeah, next. The way to do that is to really take everything that makes them cheap and legislate it out of existence. And that's what these 4 slides are about. We want people to know what they're buying. Next. Sorry. We want them to be limited to shorter terms. Right now, they keep rolling over and people get trapped in them. Next. We want them to, I love this last bullet point. We want to prohibit the sale of them. There's nothing good about them, okay? We just want them to end. And that's what we've been working on. Let's go ahead. We want a state-based exchange. Hit next because this is exciting, and that's done. This was a bipartisan effort where we are going to have a state-based exchange in Pennsylvania. Huge development. We're going to save tens of millions of dollars every year doing that because when you're part of the federal exchange, money gets sent to run Wyoming's exchange. Money gets sent to run wherever else they have a federal exchange and not a state-based exchange. Now that money's not going to get sent back to the federal government. It's going to stay in Pennsylvania, and we can pursue, very importantly, a reinsurance program that's going to help stabilize and hopefully even lower premiums on our exchange. So this is a huge step forward, and we did this by actually staying quiet. We stayed quiet about it, and the House and the Senate got it done. So huzzah, that happened last year. That was a really great step forward. Prescription drugs. Everyone knows this is a problem. Let's just keep going through these. The slides are just facts and figures. Everyone knows that the price of drugs have risen really since 1997 when they allowed them to advertise on television. The price of drugs on average has tripled since that point. 1 in 5 Pennsylvanians, actually 1 in 5 people in the country have trouble filling prescriptions due to cost. They've skipped doses, they've cut pills in half. I talk to people almost every day who have asthma issues. Asthma is not an illness that you can fool around with. You think it's under control until you end up dead. It happened to a lady who lives on my street lived on my street at home. Her asthma was quote unquote under control until it wasn't. She was a nurse. As far as I know, she was taking her medicine. My point is that asthma can just jump up and kill you. Happened to that little girl recently on Broadway. Do you remember reading about that little girl, 13 years old or something on Broadway, asthma attack, dead? I talk to people every day who are skipping their asthma meds. They want their 3 months supply to last 6 months because they can't afford it. And that's just not right. We'll keep going. Sorry. I just don't want to trap people in this room. This is important because it shows that the issue of prescription drug costs is absolutely, I'm going to say it's nonpartisan. People who are Republican, who are Democratic, who don't identify as either, know that drugs cost too much. They also, and this is hugely important, that very first one, they now agree that the government should step in and take action. That's a huge development. Up until recently, people said, yeah, it's a problem, but we don't want government involved. Now they're realizing that government has to take a role. Let's keep going. This is one of those ways we can start. This is a baby step. All this bill wants to do is make the price of drugs transparent in Pennsylvania. Don't get too caught up on this one. We were working hard on it last year. We've gotten a bunch of co-sponsors. We need a bunch more co-sponsors. We are working on it. I'm going to get to something more exciting in a few minutes. But this will, when passed, will make it easier for people to understand where those price increases go. So go forward. It'll tell us this. How much of the price is actual cost? How much goes to research and development? How much goes to ads? We don't know. We just don't know because they won't tell us. And how much go to profits? Once we can get this information, we can move forward and actually do something about it. But right now, we don't even have that information. So that's what HB 568 would do. Let's go forward. This just shows, let's see. Okay, so the blue dots or squares are pharmaceutical companies. The orange are tech companies. The green are automotive. The closer you are to that line, it means that you spend the same amount roughly on R&D as you do on advertising. If you're far above it, you spend more on advertising. If you're below it, you spend more on R&D. You can see almost every single pharmaceutical company that they could get data from is above it. Way too much money on ads, and you know that. You don't need to be told that. Nobody needs to be told that because they're sick of these ads. Let's scroll through the ads quickly. There's Advair. Advair can cost up to $800 a month. This is for people who have Medicare. Do you have a problem with that? See me afterwards because we're always interested in getting stories. People with Medicare are looking at spending $800 for their Advair. This keeps them alive. Yeah, keep going. Novolog, that's insulin. Everyone knows about insulin. And everyone knows about these ads. They're not free. Let's keep going. So what we want to do is, back up one. Did I miss one? Yeah, just back up one. I think I have it out of order. I'm sorry. So go forward two. Okay, what we want is a prescription drug advisory board. This is the most exciting thing. There's two really super exciting things, three. One is the bill to stop surprise medical bills. The other is HR 3 on the federal level, which would let Medicare negotiate for lower prices. Then there's this. And on January 14th, we are going to be in Harrisburg at the state capitol when this bill is going to be introduced by Representative Franco, who comes from outside, up on, near Pittsburgh. There are states that have this in place. What it would do is establish a board that would look at price increases. It needs data. It needs data like we talked about from 568, right? It also, though, this is another really great bill because it answers every problem, and I love bills that do that. So you say, well, we don't have data. We don't have data in Pennsylvania. We haven't passed 568, so we really can't do this. Except, no, you can, because you can get data from California, Washington, Oregon, and Texas, where they've been collecting price data. And if you want to collect data in Pennsylvania, pass 568, and you can do that too. They look at the price data, and they start talking about, can you raise the price of your medicine? That's so, I think, forward. The public gets to share their problems and the issues with the board. The board members are expert in this field. They evaluate whether a drug creates an affordability burden, like $800 a month for Advair, insulin, that's fine. And then it conducts an extensive review of the drug with all the relevant information it can gather, and then it determines whether or not to set an upper payment limit. That's not setting a price. That's different. It's not setting a price, it's setting an upper payment limit. It explains it in the next one. So that, let's go one more. So if a drug is $60,000, they want $60,000 a month for your infusion, okay? For infusions are incredibly expensive. $60,000 a month is not outside the realm of what I've heard. The board can say, nope, we're gonna set an upper limit of $30,000. We're not telling you have to charge that. We're saying you can't charge any more than that, and all the prices will fall in line according to that ceiling. That's what the Prescription Drug Advisory Board would do. Can you go forward again? So then they've anticipated. What happens if a drug manufacturer says, if I can't sell for $60,000, then I'm not going to sell my drug in Pennsylvania, and you can just die? Which is not, well, it's not beyond what they're telling us, right? They're telling us if we take even a dime out of their pockets, we will not develop any more cancer drugs, and you will die. You will die, your mother will die, your child will die. This is the message they're sending to us. We have to fight back hard, and we have to realize what they're saying, what the threats that they're making. This bill says you can't do that. We're one of the largest drug markets in the country. One, they're not going to back out. And two, there are laws against saying that you will sell something and then not sell it. And since Pennsylvania crosses all sorts of media markets, they could never do that. So really, they're trapped in a good way to sell in Pennsylvania. They could do this. They could slow the supply. They could cause shortages of drugs in Pennsylvania. They could threaten that. They're really holding us hostage. But the bill has in it a provision to import. It's an escape hatch. I get so excited about this because I'm so sick of dealing with pharmaceutical companies. They really have us over the barrel. But no more. We're fighting back. We're fighting back on the federal level, and we're fighting back on the state level. This bill is going to be introduced January 14th in Harrisburg, and I'm really hoping that some of you will join us at noon at the Capitol on the 14th. If anybody in the room or in your group has a story about the high cost of prescription medication, it would be fantastic if you could be a speaker at this event, because you're so close. You're in Harrisburg. I'm talking to other people, but they just can't get across the state in order to be there on the 14th. So I'm going to hang around, and anybody that has a story about the high cost of prescription meds, please see me, and we'll talk. Maybe you want to be part of this on the 14th. If you want to just stand there and support it, we need that as well. So let's keep going. I left this slide in to show you that other states are doing these things. Texas, Oregon, Nevada. These are not rapidly progressive states, and yet they are doing these reasonable provisions to stop and lower the cost of prescription meds. Maine has an affordability board. Maryland is working toward it. Maryland took steps to stop price gouging, but it was struck down in the courts, so now they have to go back and refigure that. But they're pushing forward. Maryland is a really exciting state for what all that they're trying to do. Let's keep going. Let me talk very briefly about the Medicare negotiation bill. Does anybody in here know about it already? Have you heard about it? So not everyone, right? Yeah, and I can just see Representative Scanlon's face. Is it Scanlon? Mary Gay Scanlon. She's out in near Philly. We were in a meeting with her, and she's like, "Why don't people know? Why don't people know about it? And really, why? Why don't we know about it?" Yeah, we've got to ask ourselves that. That's the media. This is the Elijah Cummings Lower Drug Prices Now Act. Yep, let's go to the next act. It's going to let Medicare negotiate for lower prices. Huzzah. It's going to, and this is what makes it transformative. If Medicare negotiates a lower price for Advair, let's say, or Novolog, any insulin, whatever, United Healthcare, private firms can glom onto that price. That means that a change to Medicare is going to leak into the private markets. That's transformative. Usually we can only, the federal government can only mess with Medicare. They can't really mess so much with the private markets. But because this negotiated price would be available to those plans, that's going to put pressure downward for everyone. The day this dropped, they had billboards up, they had radio ads up, talking about pharmaceutical companies, threatening, what was their tagline? Vote, protect American patients or something. Protect your access to medication, vote no on HR 3. A complete lie, complete turning everything upside down. They are well funded and they really don't want this to pass. It passed the House. and it's died in the Senate. But next year, whatever, maybe we could try again. The important thing is to let your friends and family know that this passed the House, that change is possible, that especially if they're on Medicare. Before I started doing this specific work, I thought that people on Medicare didn't have problems with their prescription drugs. You're on Medicare. Medicare for all. That's the gold standard, right? No, it most certainly definitely is not. A lot of people I talk to on Medicare have a lot of problems with their drugs, and part of the problem could have been solved with negotiating for lower prices. Also, in order to stop the generational warfare that the opposition is already starting, saying, you paid into Medicare your whole lives, and now they're changing it, they're making it worse. Can we go back to how much is going to be saved? $500 billion? The $500 billion over 10 years, they want to push part of that into expanding Medicare benefits to include, and if you're on Medicare, you know this, no vision, no hearing, no dental. They want to expand Medicare benefits to include vision, hearing, and dental, would also be transformative. So, for young people, it helps drive down the cost of prescription drugs even outside of Medicare. For people who are using Medicare, it's going to expand your benefits and drive down the cost of your drugs. It's a win-win-win. It has passed the House. You can't tell enough people that that happened.
And you can also tell them that Scott Perry voted no.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
You didn't, yes, that's absolutely, and I'm allowed to say that too. And Scott Perry did vote no. There cannot possibly be too many letters to the editor about that. Why? Representative Perry, why did you vote for my mother to pay more for her eye drops? That's another sector of drugs that are incredibly expensive, any kind of eye medication, lungs, eyes, muscular, what's it called, multiple sclerosis, cancer, and diabetes. Those are the people that get really screwed when it comes to paying because they know they need those drugs to stay alive, and in the case of glaucoma, to be able to continue to see. Bipartisan support, of course, because we did polling a long time ago at the very beginning of 2019 that showed that Democratic people, Republican people, doesn't matter, they want the cost of prescription medications to come down. So let's go. Any questions? We're done. And I apologize for I tried to go as fast as I could.
That's good.
Does anybody have questions? Yes.
I can't remember the exact name of the people, sorry. I can't remember the exact name of the boards that you talk about that if in Pennsylvania or potentially federally, if we have comparison pricing, and you mentioned, I think, Maine and Texas and Oregon. Why don't we also look at the prices of other first world countries?
Oh, HR 3 has that. HR 3 has what's called a foreign price index included in it. As far as the Prescription Drug Advisory Board bill, remember that's going to allow allow Pennsylvania to import drugs. So that's something to do with the foreign countries, right? Taking advantage of what they can do. So if a pharmaceutical company says, well, if I can't sell it for $60,000, then I'm just going to choke the supply. We'll say, okay, choke the supply all you want. We're going to go get it from wherever, Canada, where it's cheaper. We can do that. It's going to be allowed. HR 3 has a foreign price index, and I think it's 1.2 or 1.8. They can't set a price more than 1.2 or 1.8 times what this foreign price index has as it's an index. So it's going to be an average of prices. So they are looking at that. And I hate to say it, but I'm going to say it because it gives it bipartisan credibility, and that is something that President Trump talks about a lot. So, for what that's worth, that does give it that bipartisan push. Let me get the.
What do you say when they tell you that it's not going to be FDA standards from another country? That's not true.
Yeah, that's not true. It will be. It will be. Don't even engage. It will be. People do it now. I mean, if people, I know, I talk to people that.
Tactics they
Yeah,
do.
sure, it's not true. I love progressives, I'm a progressive, but we spend so much time listening to the other side and listening to their arguments and saying, well, it's a good point, and to be fair, and we're dying in our beds. People are using Walmart, they're using Walmart insulin And they're literally, there's a term for what happens to people that use Walmart insulin, and it's dead in the bed. That's a term that's popular throughout the diabetic community. Because that insulin, no, who knew? I didn't know until I started talking to people who have this interest. That insulin is not like other insulin. It's cheaper, it spikes your sugar, and then your sugar drops. When does it drop? It drops overnight, dead in the bed. As long as the pharmaceutical companies are killing people, that's period. That's how I feel like we have to get used to being firm and strong. It will be FDA approved. People are buying medicine in Mexico and Canada now. I talk to people, not every day, but frequently, who go to Canada to get their medicine. They're not dropping dead because it's the same stuff. Also, some of those FDA-approved drugs kill people. C-Vioxx.
Is your presentation available online or?
I think I can send the PDF to Kathy.
I have it and I'll send it out to
Great. And then this recording, right? They said we'll put the
Yeah.
recording
Oh,
up
the
on the
recording.
YouTube channel
This
as
will be
well.
Sign up for our field call and our email list, because we do a field call every Tuesday at 6:30 in the evening, and again at 10 a.m. on Wednesday. Almost every, it's essentially every those days. Sign up for that. Put someone from your group, your healthcare task force, on that call, because we talk about these things all the time. You get the latest updates at the federal level, you'll get the latest updates at the state level. It's really a valuable thing to do if you want to stay informed. And once you're informed, you know, you're up here with your knowledge. You don't, the learning curve is done. You're up here. So just after a few times on the call, you're caught up.
I just wanted to add a little information. So, scientists and federally funded research organizations are doing the basic research to get these drugs in the first place. So we paid for them already.
Yes.
Once they become likely to succeed, like a 1 in 3 chance, I mean, then the drug companies take them. And they've got a lot of compliance to do, but it's decades of research to get the drug to that point in the first place. So be more outraged.
Yeah, I agree with you. Be more outraged. We have to be more outraged. A part of that $500 billion in savings from HR 3 is also going to go to NIH, which is where, I'm sorry, what's your name?
Melanie.
Where Melanie is talking about, right? NIH does a lot of the research, most of the research in the beginning, definitely, and then throughout. Money is going to be pushed in that direction as well, to keep innovation happening. We will lose some drugs being brought to market. I mean, I think the CBO did say that. But our argument against that argument is, you can bring every drug to market. If I can't afford it, what good is it? And right now we have people that can't afford these drugs. So I don't care how many you're bringing, I need to be able to afford them. Oh, sorry.
My question is about the intersection of the federal ACA and then the state-based marketplace, and how that might work, and are there any obstacles in terms of like the court cases against the ACA and all?
Sorry. Yeah, what did they do? They had the court case came through about the ACA, came through the Fifth Circuit, got kicked back, which was a stalling tactic, a delay tactic, because now it's not going to happen until after the election. That was planned. So then it's going to come back, I guess, through the Fifth and then to the Supreme Court. It's going to keep going. Okay. We're keeping our eye on it. It would be a very bad thing. It would be almost impossible to just end the Affordable Care Act, because so many of us have already internalized the benefits that it gives us. I'm just going to say one, pre-existing conditions, right? We don't want to go back. So that's that. As far as the state-based exchange, we're going to be able to hire navigators at the state level. Remember, the Trump White House has been cutting back on publicity about it. They've cut back the enrollment period. They've reduced funding for navigators, which are critical to helping people use the program. The state now has this money. They can advertise. They can have any type of enrollment period they want, and they can hire navigators. And the premiums should eventually drop and become more stable, because we can also pursue our own reinsurance plan that the federal government was messing around with.
So is there any federal funding part that applies to the state that would be in jeopardy if the federal
Oh, absolutely. If the affordable, sorry. If the federal law were to end, that would be it. We wouldn't be able to maintain it. Right. And neither would we be able to maintain Medicaid expansion, which I didn't even mention, but Medicaid expansion is part of the Affordable Care Act too, and that saves lives every day. 700,000 people in Pennsylvania use the Medicaid expansion.
I do.
Great, it's a great program. Medicaid for all. Anybody else?
Just real quickly, so I also was able to take advantage of the medical access with disability. I think we're one of the few states that even offer it. But the day I turned 65, that ended, and my inhaler then cost me $371 a month. You can't get a coupon unless you're on Medicaid, Medicare, and Medicare recipients are not eligible for the pharmaceutical coupons. So now we're in a decision-making mode of like, do you use it every other day? Do you not have it at all? What are your options when it comes to asthma?
I can tell you a shortcut some people use. This doesn't work for everything, but you could go to a, quote, different pharmacy and ask for a good RX coupon or get one online, and go in and don't tell them you have Medicare. If you tell them you have Medicare, they have to do what you just said.
Yes.
But if they don't know you have Medicare, you just choose not to tell them, and you get the good RX, find out what the price is, you may save money.
You may save
You
money.
may save money, but $300 is $300,
It's
and
worth
if
a
you can
try.
get it 200, might be worth it.
Well, the coupon they offer on the one, interestingly enough, Brio, the coupon, if you can use the coupon, it's only $45 as opposed to $371. So, tell me how much they need that
And that's
from.
an excellent question. What's your name?
Jan.
So Jan just said, so what do things cost? Right? We don't know because they don't have to tell us. It's the Wild West. They can charge whatever they want, and people have to pay it. You can't, people do walk away and leave their breathing medicine at the table, but a lot of people don't because they don't want to die. And they, what are they going to do? They don't buy as much food that month. That's what 568 would be good for. The transparency bill I talked about. That's what the Prescription Drug Advisory Board would be good for. That would help us figure out, so what do things cost? And how much of that cost is going to ads? How much of that cost is going to research and development? You have to let us know.
Hi, can you speak to the new Pennsylvania Medicaid formulary for pharmaceuticals and how that may Medicaid? Okay.
Repeat it so they know what I can't do.
So Pennsylvania has a new Medicaid formulary for pharmaceuticals through all Medicaid, managed care Medicaid plans. It is the same across the board for all Medicaid managed care organizations. And I was asking if she could speak to that and how that process of that may impact other changes. However, she's not able to speak to that.
This is community health choices. Yes.
But it's all Medicaid plans, it's not just CHC.
Okay. We do have someone in our company, an organization, who does know about that. And I can put you in touch with that person, if that's okay. I am not informed on that. That's what in my brain, it's the community health choices bucket. I'm not an expert on that, so sorry. But I can put you in contact with the person who's able to talk about it.
I'm hoping, my hope is that because of that major change, again, it's all Medicaid managed care organizations, so it's the three big ones, AmeriHealth, and full disclosure, I do work for them, as well as UPMC is the other big one, but all across this, is there 7? But all Medicaid managed care organizations across the state now have to abide by this formulary.
We do. And it's confusing because there's 7 physical health, but there's 5 behavioral health, and then we've just thrown in the Medicare, and that's another 3 or 4 MCOs. So the managed care organizations is a large consortium of them.
If there's interest,
Behavioral health doesn't cover pharmacy.
Well, that's true. It's kind of split, so you have, yeah.
If there's interest in this, I can tell my bosses, and I can say that people around the state
Yeah.
might be interested in a webinar about this. And then we can get that going if you'd like, if you think that would be helpful, we can definitely do that. Are we done?
I have a question,
Oh.
actually. What challenges are presented, by the companies that are healthcare providers and also insurers? Because like at my place of work, with Geisinger, you know, we have Geisinger and Highmark, but Geisinger, you know, encourages people to use Geisinger and lowers the cost for everything if you're Geisinger, you have Geisinger insurance and you're using Geisinger healthcare, and then so much of what the Highmark system, you know, so many of the providers that you go to if you have Highmark insurance are in Geisinger, and then they charge a ridiculous amount to use it through Highmark, but they say, oh, well, then you should sign up for our insurance. Like, it feels to me like this is a huge problem that they're both insurers and healthcare providers, and that they're able to manipulate the prices to drive everyone towards their insurance.
That is a problem, and you saw that happen with UPMC and Highmark out west, which was a huge battle that had people, you know, cancer patients up all night thinking, am I gonna be able to continue to see my doctor, my oncologist, my hematologist, all these people that are important to my healthcare, because they were gonna cut that off. So yes, that is a problem.
Are we trying to do anything? Is there any legislation to try and like?
Not that I'm aware of, no. But it's case by case, and the Attorney General, that's a Department of Insurance, Pennsylvania, to look into, and they just went through it with UPMC and Highmark, so I know that they're looking to it. And UPMC is moving out, they're in Reading now. So they wanna take that model statewide, and it does put, yeah, and it's a cash cow, right? So it does put people in a difficult position, and that is something that needs to be legislated, and I will also talk to my bosses about that if there's interest in a webinar about that as well. So we have CHC, formulary, Medicaid, and that, UPMC, integrated provider, insurer, profits. Okay.
Used to call vertical
Integration,
monopolies.
yes. Anybody else? Before I stop then, please, if you can see me before we leave, I'll stay to the end of the meeting. We need storytellers on the 14th. Just one would be enough, 2 would be great. You're right close by to the Capitol, might not be too much of a burden. If you want to be there when we drop the bill, please do, please join us. And then generally, stories. We need stories about high cost of medication, if anybody's gotten a surprise medical bill, that story would be very helpful. A lot of people, for some reason, don't want to share those stories. Some people think, oh, I did, but then I called them and it got worked out, so it's okay. But that you got it is the problem, right? And we know there are plenty of people paying these bills. They don't know they're surprise bills. It's just another $117 bill. I'll just pay it. Yeah, I guess I went to the doctor on that day. $117 it's the $2,000 bills that people notice, but those other bills are sliding in and getting paid, and that's a problem. If 1862 passes, the patient doesn't see any bill. You never see a bill. You see the standard bill, but you never see the balanced bill. You never see, pay me the rest of what I want to get paid. That's taken up with the insurance company, not you. Yay. Okay, thank you so much.